The morning sun painted Westminster Abbey in golden light as crowds gathered along the barriers. Among the sea of faces stood Margaret Thompson, a 70-year-old grandmother who had traveled from Scotland just to catch a glimpse of the royal couple. She clutched a small bouquet of wildflowers, her hands trembling slightly from both age and excitement. William and Kate were attending a memorial service for fallen soldiers. The occasion was solemn, and the usual cheerful atmosphere that followed the royals was replaced with quiet respect. As their car pulled up, Margaret noticed something different about them that day. Their faces carried a weight that seemed heavier than usual. The couple emerged from the vehicle, and William immediately turned to help Kate with her coat. It was a simple gesture, one he had done countless times before, but today it carried something more. His hand lingered on her back for just a moment longer than necessary, and Kate looked up at him with eyes that seemed to hold an entire conversation. Earlier that morning, the palace had received news that would not be made public for several hours. A young soldier, someone William had personally known from his military days, had passed away unexpectedly. The soldier's family had requested privacy, but they wanted William to know before the service. The prince had taken the call in his study, and Kate had found him there afterward, sitting in silence. She had not asked questions. Instead, she had simply placed her hand over his and sat beside him. They remained that way for several minutes, sharing a grief that needed no words. Now, as they walked toward the abbey, that same understanding flowed between them. The crowd watched as the couple made their way along the barriers, accepting flowers and shaking hands. When they reached Margaret, something remarkable happened. A young child nearby had begun to cry, overwhelmed by the crowds and noise. Without hesitation, Kate knelt down to the child's level, while William simultaneously moved to create a small barrier with his body, shielding them from the pressing crowd. Margaret watched this wordless coordination with fascination. The couple had not looked at each other, had not spoken a word, yet they moved as one unit. Kate produced a small tissue from her pocket and gently wiped the child's tears, while William spoke quietly to the mother, assuring her everything was fine. As Kate stood, her eyes met William's for just a fraction of a second. In that brief moment, Margaret saw something that made her breath catch. It was not the practiced smiles they wore for cameras, nor the rehearsed gestures of public figures. It was raw, honest emotion, a mixture of sadness for the day's purpose, compassion for the distressed child, and deep, unmistakable love for each other. The couple continued their walk, but Margaret noticed how William's hand found the small of Kate's back again, guiding her gently through the crowd. It was protective without being possessive, supportive without being obvious. When someone called out to them from the back of the crowd, they both turned at exactly the same moment, as if connected by an invisible thread. Inside the abbey, the service was deeply moving. The cameras captured the formal proceedings, but what they missed were the small moments between William and Kate. During a particularly emotional eulogy, Kate's hand moved just slightly toward William's. He responded by shifting his position imperceptibly, their shoulders now touching, providing silent support. When the service mentioned the young soldiers who had recently given their lives, William's jaw tightened. Kate, without looking at him, moved her hymn book so that their hands briefly touched on its cover. It was a gesture so small that no one else would have noticed, but William's shoulders relaxed slightly. As the congregation rose for the final hymn, an elderly veteran in a wheelchair struggled with his program. Both William and Kate noticed at the same moment. Without any visible communication, William stepped forward to help the man while Kate moved to speak with his caregiver, ensuring they had everything they needed. Their movements were so synchronized that the veteran later told his daughter it was like watching a beautifully choreographed dance. After the service, as they prepared to leave, the couple faced the cameras outside. The press called out questions, flashbulbs popped incessantly, but, for just a moment, William and Kate looked at each other. No words were exchanged, but in that look was everything: shared sorrow for the losses remembered that day, mutual strength drawn from each other, and a promise to face whatever came next together. Margaret Thompson was not the only one who noticed. Around her, she heard whispers from the crowd. "Did you see that?" one woman murmured. "The way they just looked at each other, it gave me goosebumps." An elderly man nearby nodded, adding quietly, "That's what real love looks like. No need for words when you understand each other that deeply." As the royal car pulled away, Margaret realized she had witnessed something special. In an age of constant communication, of texts and calls and social media updates, William and Kate had shown that sometimes the most profound exchanges happen in silence. Their tender, wordless moments had spoken volumes about their relationship, their compassion, and their dedication not just to duty, but to each other. That evening, Margaret would return home to Scotland and tell her family about what she had seen. She would struggle to put it into words, because how could she explain the power of a glance, the significance of a touch, the beauty of two people so in tune that they moved as one? But she would try, because she knew she had witnessed something that revealed the true heart of the future king and queen, not in grand speeches or formal declarations, but in the quiet, tender moments between them that required no words at all. 3 months had passed since the memorial service, and December brought with it the annual Christmas charity concert at the Royal Albert Hall. This year's event held special significance. It would honor healthcare workers who had gone above and beyond in their service. Among the invited guests was Dr. Sarah Chen, a pediatric surgeon who had recently performed a life-saving operation on a young boy named Thomas. The Royal Albert Hall glowed with festive decorations, but beneath the celebration lay stories of struggle, sacrifice, and triumph. William and Kate had personally requested that the evening focus not on ceremony, but on the real human stories behind the healthcare heroes being honored. As guests began arriving, Dr. Chen found herself overwhelmed by the grandeur of the occasion. She had spent the last 20 years in operating rooms and hospital corridors, and the glamorous setting made her feel out of place. She stood near the entrance, clutching her invitation, when she noticed the royal couple greeting guests nearby. What struck Dr. Chen first was how William and Kate worked together. They had positioned themselves so that William greeted guests first, allowing him to gauge if someone seemed particularly nervous or overwhelmed. If they did, he would spend an extra moment with them, and, somehow, without any visible signal, Kate would know to come over and join the conversation, bringing her warm, calming presence. When they reached Dr. Chen, William noticed her hospital ID badge, which she had forgotten to remove in her nervousness. Rather than pointing it out, he smiled and said, "I see you've come straight from saving lives." His tone was so genuine that Dr. Chen felt her anxiety melting away. Kate joined them then, and, without missing a beat, added, "We've heard about your incredible work with young Thomas. How is he doing?" The doctor was amazed. They knew about her specific case, had taken the time to learn about the boy she had saved. As she began to tell them about Thomas's recovery, she noticed how the couple listened, really listened. When she mentioned that Thomas had recently taken his first steps post-surgery, Kate's eyes filled with tears. William's hand moved almost imperceptibly to touch Kate's elbow, a gesture of shared emotion that Dr. Chen found deeply moving. As the evening progressed, something unexpected happened. During the concert, a commotion arose in the upper balcony. A guest had fallen ill, an elderly nurse named Patricia who had been honored for her 50 years of service. The music stopped, and anxiety rippled through the crowd. Without hesitation, both William and Kate rose from their seats. But, instead of rushing forward together, they split their response perfectly. William moved toward the balcony to assess the situation and clear a path for medical help, while Kate went to the side entrance where she knew the medical team would enter, ensuring they could get through quickly. Dr. Chen, who had also rushed to help, witnessed their coordination with professional admiration. William was calm but authoritative, asking people to step back and give space. Kate, meanwhile, had not only guided the medical team but had also thought to grab a bottle of water and a blanket from the preparation area. They had never discussed this, never planned it, yet they worked in perfect harmony. When Patricia was stabilized and insisted she was fine, just overwhelmed by the evening, William and Kate's response touched everyone deeply. Instead of returning to their seats and continuing the program, Kate suggested they bring chairs up to the balcony so Patricia could rest comfortably while still enjoying the concert. William immediately understood and helped arrange this, even carrying one of the chairs himself. But the most powerful moment came when Patricia, embarrassed by the attention, began to apologize profusely. William and Kate exchanged a quick glance, just a flash of understanding, and then Kate sat down next to Patricia and took her hand. "You've spent 50 years caring for others," she said softly. "Let us care for you for one evening." William, still standing, added with a gentle smile, the concert can wait. People are more important than programs. The way he said it, the way Kate nodded in agreement without looking at him, showed everyone present that this was not a rehearsed response but a shared value that ran deep in both of them. Young Thomas, the boy Dr. Chen had saved, was also in attendance with his family. He had been invited to present flowers to Kate at the end of the evening. But, when the moment came, the 7-year-old froze with stage fright, unable to move from his mother's side. The packed auditorium waited, and what could have been an awkward moment became something beautiful. William and Kate looked at each other across the stage. No words were exchanged, but an entire conversation seemed to pass between them. Then, breaking all protocol, they both left the stage and walked up the aisle to where Thomas sat. Kate knelt beside him while William stood nearby, creating a sense of privacy in the very public space. "These are beautiful flowers," Kate said softly to Thomas. "Would you like to keep them? I think they'd look lovely in your room." The boy nodded, still too shy to speak. William then crouched down too and whispered something that made Thomas giggle. Later, his mother would reveal that William had told him about a time when he, as a young prince, had been too scared to give flowers to his grandmother, the Queen. The audience watched in hushed awe as the couple spent several minutes with Thomas, never rushing him, never making him feel like he had failed. When they finally stood to return to the stage, Thomas suddenly found his courage. "Wait," he called out, and ran after them with the flowers. The entire hall erupted in applause, but what moved people most was the look William and Kate shared, pure joy mixed with relief, a silent celebration of the child's breakthrough. Dr. Chen was not the only one wiping away tears. Throughout the audience, people were deeply moved by what they had witnessed. This was not about royal protocol or public relations. This was about two people who genuinely cared, who worked together seamlessly to put others at ease, who communicated volumes without speaking a word. After the concert, as guests mingled in the reception area, Dr. Chen overheard numerous conversations about the evening. But they were not talking about the performances or the grandeur of the event. They were talking about the wordless exchanges between William and Kate, the way they had responded to Patricia's illness, the gentleness with which they had approached Thomas, the perfect synchronization of their compassion. One nurse summed it up beautifully: "You can tell a lot about a person by how they treat others when things don't go according to plan. Tonight, we saw their true hearts." Another added, "It's like they share one mind when it comes to caring for people. No discussion needed, they just know." As Dr. Chen left the Royal Albert Hall that night, she reflected on what she had witnessed. In her operating room, she worked with teams who had to communicate without words, or a glance or gesture could convey critical information. She had seen that same wordless communication tonight, but instead of saving lives in surgery, William and Kate had used it to touch hearts, to comfort the anxious, and to show that true leadership comes from genuine care for others. The evening had been meant to honor healthcare heroes, but it had revealed something equally powerful: a future king and queen whose partnership went beyond public duty to a deep, personal commitment to lifting others up. Their tender, wordless exchanges throughout the night had shown the nation that compassion needs no words when it comes from the heart, and that true love manifests not in grand declarations but in the seamless way two people work together to make the world a little brighter for everyone they meet. The spring rain fell gently on the windows of Great Ormond Street Hospital as William and Kate made their way through the children's ward. This visit was different from their usual royal engagements. They had requested no media presence for the first hour, wanting to spend genuine time with the young patients without the pressure of cameras. Emma Mitchell, the ward's head nurse, had worked at the hospital for 15 years, but she had never seen anything quite like what unfolded that afternoon. As she led the couple through the corridors, she noticed immediately how they moved together, not like two separate people fulfilling an obligation, but like two parts of a whole, each complementing the other perfectly. Their first stop was the playroom, where several children were engaged in various activities. A little girl named Lucy, just 4 years old, was struggling with a puzzle in the corner, growing frustrated as the pieces would not fit together. Emma watched as William and Kate noticed her at exactly the same moment. Without any discussion, they approached the child, Kate sitting on one side and William on the other. What happened next was like watching a gentle dance. Kate would pick up a piece and turn it thoughtfully, while William would point to where it might fit. When Lucy tried to force a piece into the wrong spot, Kate would gently guide her hand while William offered encouragement. Not once did they speak to each other about their approach, they simply knew. When Lucy finally completed the puzzle, her squeal of delight was matched by the genuine joy on both royal faces. In the art therapy room, they encountered Marcus, a 9-year-old boy who had been in the hospital for several months. He was painting a picture but had grown quiet and withdrawn when the visitors entered. Emma knew Marcus had been having a particularly difficult week with his treatments. Kate approached first, admiring his painting from a respectful distance. William hung back, and Emma realized he was reading the boy's body language, giving him space. When Marcus finally looked up, William stepped forward, but instead of towering over the child, he grabbed a small chair and sat down, making himself less intimidating. "I'm terrible at painting," William confided to Marcus. "Kate always laughs at my attempts." Kate, hearing this, came closer and gently touched William's shoulder. "That's not true," she said softly, but her eyes twinkled with affection. "Your sunflowers were abstract." Marcus smiled slightly at this exchange, and that small smile seemed to pass between William and Kate like an electric current. Without any verbal communication, they both reached for paintbrushes. What followed was 20 minutes of the future King and Queen of England painting alongside a sick child, getting paint on their clothes, and creating what could generously be called experimental art. When Marcus finally really laughed, at William's attempt to paint a dog that looked more like a misshapen cloud, Kate caught William's eye. The look they shared was one of pure triumph. They had broken through the boy's sadness, if only for a moment, and that moment meant everything. The most profound moment came when they visited the intensive care unit. Here, the children were too ill for regular interaction. Parents kept vigil by bedsides, exhausted and scared. Emma warned the couple that this would be the most difficult part of their visit. In one room, they found a mother named Janet sitting beside her daughter Sophia, who was sleeping after a major operation. Janet had not left the hospital in 3 days. Her husband was home with their other children, and she was alone, scared, and exhausted. William and Kate entered the room quietly. What struck Emma was how they seemed to assess the situation instantly, without words. William moved to the small window, adjusting the blinds to let in a bit more light, while Kate approached Janet slowly, reading her body language for permission to come closer. When Janet began to cry, apologizing for her tears, something beautiful happened. Kate simply sat down beside her and took her hand, while William moved to the other side, creating a protective circle around the grieving mother. They did not speak for several moments, just offered their presence. Then, Kate asked quietly about Sophia's favorite things. As Janet began to talk about her daughter's love of butterflies, William noticed a small sketchpad on the bedside table. Without asking, he picked it up and began drawing. Kate continued to listen to Janet, occasionally glancing at William's progress, and somehow knowing exactly when to direct Janet's attention to what he was doing. William had drawn a butterfly, not perfectly, but with obvious care. He quietly tore out the page and placed it where Sophia would see it when she woke. The gesture was small, but Janet's reaction was profound. "She'll love that," she whispered through her tears. "She collects butterfly pictures." William and Kate exchanged another of their wordless communications, and Kate reached into her purse, pulling out a small butterfly pin from her own jacket. "Would she like this?" she asked Janet. "I'd be honored if she would keep it." Emma watched this unfold with amazement. There had been no discussion between the couple about what to do, how to help. They had simply acted in perfect harmony, one comforting while the other found a practical way to bring joy, then switching roles seamlessly. As they prepared to leave the ward, one final incident occurred that would stay with everyone who witnessed it. A young boy named David, who was scheduled for surgery the next day, had been watching the royal couple from his doorway. He was clearly scared about his upcoming operation but too shy to approach them. William noticed him first, nudging Kate subtly. She followed his gaze and immediately understood. Together, they walked over to David, but instead of overwhelming him with attention, they struck up a conversation about the football poster on the wall near his room. Within minutes, David was animatedly discussing his favorite team. When it came time to say goodbye, David suddenly blurted out, "I'm scared about tomorrow." The raw honesty of the admission seemed to catch everyone off guard. Emma watched as William and Kate had one of their silent conversations through just a glance. Then, William knelt down to David's level while Kate stood beside him, her hand on William's shoulder in support. "I get scared too," William told the boy. "Everyone does. But, you know what? Being brave doesn't mean you're not scared. It means you do what needs to be done even when you are scared. And, you," he pointed gently at David, "are one of the bravest people I've met today." Kate added softly, "And, tomorrow, when you're feeling scared, remember that there are lots of people thinking of you and sending you courage. Including us." The way she said us, the way William nodded in agreement, showed that this was not a royal decree but a personal promise from two people who genuinely cared. As the couple finally left the hospital, Emma and her colleagues gathered to discuss what they had witnessed. It was not the first time royalty had visited, but it was the first time they had seen such genuine, wordless understanding between two people. "Did you notice how they never had to ask each other what to do?" one nurse commented. "They just knew." Another added, "When that mother was crying, they created this bubble of comfort around her without saying a word to each other. It was like watching a masterclass in compassion." Dr. Helen Roberts, who had observed the visit, put it best: "What we saw today was not performance. It was two people who have developed such a deep understanding that they can communicate entire conversations with a glance. They showed our patients and families what partnership really means." The impact of the visit rippled out beyond the hospital walls. Parents who had been there told friends and family. Staff members shared their observations. The story spread not because of any grand gestures or memorable speeches, but because of the quiet, tender moments of connection. Janet, Sophia's mother, would later write a letter to the hospital, saying that the visit had given her strength during the darkest time of her life. "They didn't just come to be seen," she wrote. "They came to see us, to really see us. And, the way they worked together, supporting each other while supporting us, it showed me what love in action looks like." Young David's surgery went well, and he kept talking about how the prince had called him brave. His mother reported that he had gone into the operating room clutching a drawing William had made for him, another butterfly, quickly sketched and given without fanfare. Marcus continued his art therapy with new enthusiasm, often telling other children about the day the prince and princess painted with him. Lucy's parents framed the completed puzzle, a reminder of a moment when their daughter's joy had been reflected in the faces of the future king and queen. As the news of the visit spread through word of mouth and social media posts from grateful families, the nation began to understand something profound. In an age of careful public relations and staged photo opportunities, William and Kate had shown something real and unscripted. Their wordless exchanges, the gentle touches, the knowing glances, the seamless coordination of their compassion, had revealed the authentic foundation of their relationship. Editorial writers and social commentators tried to analyze what made the hospital visit so special. But those who had been there knew it could not be reduced to words on a page. It was about presence, about two people so attuned to each other and to the needs of others that they moved through the world as a single force for good. Emma Mitchell, reflecting on the day weeks later, said it best: "They showed us that real love is not about grand declarations. It's about knowing your partner so well that you can face someone else's pain together without needing to coordinate your response. It's about strengthening each other so you can strengthen others. That's what we saw, a love that speaks loudest in its silence." The spring rain had stopped by the time William and Kate left the hospital that day, and sun broke through the clouds. They walked to their car hand in hand, and, just before getting in, they paused and looked back at the building. No words were exchanged, but in that look was everything: shared sorrow for the suffering they had witnessed, mutual admiration for the strength of the families they had met, and a renewed commitment to using their position to bring light to dark places. The nation had indeed been deeply touched, not by what William and Kate had said, but by what they had not needed to say. Their tender, wordless exchange had become a powerful reminder that the strongest bonds are often those that need no words at all, and that true leadership comes from the heart, expressed in the silent language of genuine care and unshakable partnership.